Hello everyone, my name is Kitty and happy October 1st. I wanted to kick this month off and make a very special and fun costume, so I made Princess Jasmine. I want to celebrate this whole month making lots of fun projects and costumes and just getting in the Halloween spirit. So hopefully in this video I can share with you how I made this costume and maybe you can make it for yourself for Halloween. So let's just get started. For materials, I used this gorgeous raw silk. It had such an amazing texture and sheen to it, and the color was absolutely perfect for Jasmine. I was lucky to find this at an estate sale, but you're open to using any fabric of your choice. Just remember it will drape differently depending on the fabric you choose. I also used a matching thread, some boning for the bodice, and some wide elastic. And to make drafting the pattern for the pants easier, I recommend finding a pair of pants in a non-stretch fabric that fit you comfortably through the waist and hips. So let's start by drafting the pattern for the bodice. You'll need a piece of fabric that you can wrap around your chest and is as tall as you want the bodice to be. Wrap the fabric around your chest and then pin one side, sort of creating a tube top. Trim off any extra fabric if necessary. Once you have your fake tube top on, you're ready to start pinning in your darts. I like to decide where I want my dart and then grab that flap of fabric and pin it in place. You're sort of creating a tab along the bust. I mirror this process on the other side to make sure I like how it sits, and then I take a marker and start drawing in the shape of my bodice. I gave it a slight pointed front and tapered it down to a narrower back. I also mark where I will be cutting those pieces to create the pattern. You can see I have drawn lines along the pins. I then unpin the tube top and take it off and use a second marker in a different color to clean up any lines and finalize my pattern. Be sure to mark the top and bottom. When you're finished, you can cut it out. Now we're going to use those pants to make our pants pattern. Inside them out and fold them in half, and then you can lie it on some paper. I decided I wanted to make my pants a little bit longer so it will have more of a blousing effect, and they will be very full and poofy. So, I measure out how long I want my pants, place them on my paper, and start tracing. The important thing that we're copying is the curve of the crotch and then to the top of the pant, the waistband. I will be flaring them out to make them much wider. Now to create a pattern for the waistband. I'm going to first make my front half of my waistband and give it a slight point in the front. My back waistband will be much longer, about 6 inches total longer in the back. That way I can add an elastic band for easy getting on and off. You can see the back half of my waistband is about 3 inches longer than my front half because I will be cutting these pattern pieces on fold. Now I am creating an adjustment to the back half of my pants pattern, since I want the back half of my pants to be about 6 inches total longer. This is because I will be adding an elastic waistband only to the back half of my pants. Because this fabric is so fabulous, I am going to very carefully lay out my pattern pieces before cutting. In hindsight, I wish I had cut the crotch curve a little bit longer on my pants. And you will want to cut out 3 copies of your bodice pattern to make your bodice. Now I only want the back 2 pieces of my pants longer for the elastic waistband, so I'm going to fold over that little notation in my pattern and trim the front 2 pieces. You can see how the pants match their waistband. Start by taking your 2 front pants pieces and sewing them along the crotch curve. Do the same for the back 2 pieces of your pants. Now match the front of your pants to the back of your pants along the side seams and pin them together. You'll want to be very careful to match the sides. Once you've finished pinning, you can sew them together. Next, match your front crotch seam to your back crotch seam and pin it together. Work along the inside seam of your pants and pin them together so that you can sew them. Now let's add an elastic cuff to the bottom of your pants. Start by taking that bottom edge and folding it over and then stitching it down in place. You're going to fold that edge over one more time, but you want to make sure it's wide enough for elastic. You're then going to stitch that fold down. Make sure you leave a space to insert the elastic, and it is optional, but you can add a stitch to the bottom of the channel as well. Then insert your elastic through the opening you left and pull it through. Once you pull your elastic out on the other side, stitch the 2 edges together. And lastly, stitch that little opening shut. Now to make the waistband for your pants. Sew along the top of your front pants waistband and your back pants waistband. And then matching those top seams together, sew them along the side, pretty sides touching. You can attach both sides to one another to create a loop, and then mark the front center of your waistband. Now on the inside of your pants, you're going to want to pin the waistband to your pants. You will be matching the inside seam of your pants to the front center pretty side of your waistband. This is how it's going to look once it's pinned together. Once you're finished, you can move to the sewing machine and sew that edge. Now you will be reaching inside your pants, grabbing that waistband, pulling it over, and folding it down on top of your pants. Be sure to fold that under edge underneath, that way you have no raw edges. I like to start at the center back and work around from side seam to side seam and pin it in place. Start by just folding over the waistband to the back of your pants. We will return to the front in a minute. Once it is pinned smoothly in place, you can sew along the edge of your waistband. And remember, just go from side to side along the back. Now we're going to insert the elastic in the back waistband of your pants. Our waistband is effectively an elastic channel, so I like to start on one side seam and feed the elastic through. On the side seam where your front waistband meets your back waistband is where I will stitch down the elastic in place. Now you only have elastic in the back of your pants and you have a flat waistband on the front. After you have inserted your elastic and stitched it in place, you can continue folding over the front portion of your waistband and pinning it in place. And once you've finished top stitching your waistband down, your pants are finished. So if you want to add boning to your bodice, you'll basically want 3 layers of bodice. You're going to sew 2 layers together. This is where we're going to be making the boning channels. Sew your side pieces to your front pieces and your back pieces to your side pieces. this is all 2 layers of fabric, you can stitch where you want your boning channels to be. I did it along my seams and a few on the side and back. I think you can just barely see where I stitched my boning channels in here. Now let's make the top layer for your bodice. Attach the side pieces to your front piece and your back pieces to your side pieces. Once finished, you're going to match your top layer to your inside layers, starting at the center and working your way around the edges, pinning them together. Once pinned together, you can sew along the side edges and the top. Before I flip my bodice with the pretty side showing, I go ahead and insert my boning into the boning channels I stitched on the bottom 2 layers of my bodice. I like to cut my boning about 1 centimeter shorter, that way I have room for the bottom seam later. After adding the boning, I flip it so you can see the pretty sides. I match the bottom together, pin it in place, and then sew along that bottom edge. I also trimmed up any unevenness. Out of some scraps of fabric, I cut 2 long rectangles about 18 inches long. I will be using these rectangles to create sleeves. So I finished the edges, added some hand pleats, and stitched them in place on top of my bodice. Out of some scraps of fabric, I cut some strips to create some faux bias tape for the bottom of my bodice. I joined these rectangles together to make a long strip. I then pinned this strip to the inside and bottom of my bodice. Next, I stitched it down, and I was sure to fold over the edges, that way there was no exposed edges. Once I finished pinning it in place, I straight stitched that bottom edge together. I then folded that long strip of faux bias tape over to the front of my bodice and folded the other raw edge underneath. I then pinned that strip of faux bias tape along the bottom front of my bodice. And once you are finished, you can top stitch it down in place. I then removed my pins and moved on to the back closure of my bodice. Now you can add any closure to the back of your bodice, but because I was cut short on time and I wanted to finish this video in time for the beginning of October, I decided just to use ribbons to create a faux corset back. So take a piece of ribbon and a nice color and tie knots about 1 inch apart along the length of the ribbon. You can then pin the ribbon, kind of weaving it back and forth in an S shape along the back of your bodice. Once pinned in place, you can stitch down the knots on the back of your bodice. This is going to create loops so that you can use another ribbon to tie the back together. This ribbon style corset back is not very sturdy, but it is a nice, affordable, and easy method to use. And lastly, I used some scrap fabric to create a headband, and I used some cardboard and acrylic paint to create some fake jewelry. So let's see how it all came together. Thank you so much everyone for watching. If you like this video and want to see more DIY videos, please like and subscribe. And please don't come for me. It was the only wig I had, and instead of Raja, I used my Furby backpack. But again, thank you so much everyone. Have an awesome October.